Welcome to the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass. We are so glad you are tuning in today.
Yeah, really glad you're here.
Today, we have a deep dive that is just, well, it is incredibly profound. I want you to imagine walking down this sandy, unpaved path. The West African sun is just beating down on your shoulders.
Oh, and the humidity's thick, like really thick.
Exactly. And in the distance, you hear the low, rhythmic roar of the Atlantic Ocean. But, you aren't just going to the beach. You are stepping into the exact footprints of millions of human beings who walked this specific path knowing they would never, ever return.
It is heavy. It really is.
Today, we aren't just taking a vacation. We are taking a pilgrimage. We are taking you with us on a historical journey that we completely immersed ourselves in, traveling from the kinetic, vibrant streets of Lagos, Nigeria, out to the ancient coastal town of Badagry.
And I know exactly what some of you listening right now might be thinking. Because, well, we had these exact same hesitations before we actually dug into the research and lived this experience.
Oh, absolutely. It is intimidating.
Right. You might be feeling intimidated by the logistics of West African travel. Navigating the roads, the infrastructure, the bookings. It can seem daunting if you haven't done it before.
And then there is the emotional side of it.
Exactly. The undeniable, heavy emotional weight of confronting the transatlantic slave trade up close. But we want to reassure you, our mission today is to decode exactly how to navigate this journey respectfully, safely, and seamlessly. We're comparing two premium guided day tours to give you the absolute insider view.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how to visit Badagry, you have to understand the sheer whiplash of leaving Lagos behind. I mean, Lagos is this absolute explosion of energy.
Oh man, it vibrates. Millions of people, constant movement, incredible music.
Yes, just laughter and life everywhere. But as you take this guided journey westward toward the border of Benin out to Badagry, the landscape shifts. The noise just drops away.
It gets very quiet.
Right. You are entering one of the major historical arteries of the slave trade. But wait, before we get into the specific sites, why Badagry? Out of the entire West African coastline, how did this specific town become such a massive epicenter?
Well, it came down to a pretty devastating combination of geography and local politics. Badagry is situated perfectly between the Atlantic Ocean and this complex network of inland lagoons and creeks.
Like a massive natural harbor?
Exactly. In the 18th and 19th centuries, that made it a highly strategic, sheltered spot. European ships could anchor off the coast, and the inland waterways provided a direct route to transport captured individuals.
Right, from the interior region straight to the shore.
Yeah, it became a highly organized, deeply entrenched economic machine.
Which brings us to the actual sites you visit on these tours, because this isn't just, looking at artifacts behind glass. It is a deeply physical, sensory experience. Yeah. The itineraries take you to the Badagry Slave Museum and the Vlekete Market. And from what the sources describe, Vlekete wasn't just a trading post for goods. It was the largest slave market in West Africa.
That is correct. And to understand the mechanics of Vlekete Market is to understand the chilling bureaucracy of the trade. This wasn't chaotic at all.
It was systemic.
Very systemic. It operated on a specific schedule, drawing European buyers, primarily Portuguese, Dutch, and British. They would negotiate directly with local chiefs and middlemen. Human lives were bartered for things like brass and mirrors.
Gunpowder and alcohol too, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And right next to this economic hub, you have the Mobee Royal Family Slave Relics Museum. That is where you transition from understanding the macroeconomics to confronting the micro-physical reality.
Yeah, that part gave me absolute chills when going through the source material. The tours literally take you into these preserved spaces, like the actual cells.
It is intense.
You are standing in the exact dimensions of those walls. You get this terrifying sense of how suffocating it must have been. The lack of air, the heat, the sheer physical confinement.
It is overwhelming to just stand there.
But what I found really compelling about the way these tours are structured is that they don't just leave you in the trauma. The guides actively share untold stories of fierce African resistance and survival.
That is a crucial distinction. The historical narrative often strips the enslaved of their agency, painting them only as victims.
Right, passive victims.
But on the ground in Badagry, the local guides explain how these individuals fought back. They detail the uprisings and the subtle acts of sabotage.
The desperate bids for freedom.
Exactly. And the sheer psychological endurance required to survive those cells. You aren't just walking through a graveyard of history. You are walking through a testament to human endurance.
And that endurance culminates in the physical walk across Gripperfu Island to what is known as the point of no return.
That walk is something else.
You are walking the same dirt, the same path towards the Atlantic Ocean where millions of enslaved Africans took their final steps on home soil before being forced onto ships. To put this in perspective, I have to draw an analogy here.
Go for it.
Visiting a place like the Colosseum or the Tower of London is like reading a chapter in a history book. You are observing the past from a safe, modern distance. But walking the path to the point of no return is like reading a diary.
Oh, wow. That is a powerful way to put it.
It forces you to step inside the emotional state of the people who lived it. It collapses the distance between past and present. So, for the traveler who wants to pay their respects, how do these structured tours actually balance honoring such a devastatingly heavy history without leaving you completely emotionally broken down by noon?
Well, what's fascinating here is how deliberate the tour design actually is to prevent that exact emotional breakdown. These are not self-guided walks where you are left alone to absorb the trauma of the space.
Right, you're not just wandering around aimlessly.
No, the tours heavily rely on knowledgeable local guides who provide, as the source text notes, deep care and respect. They curate the experience so that there is intentional space for reflection.
Casing you.
Exactly, they are pacing you. By guiding you through the mechanics of the history and anchoring that tragedy in the narrative of survival, they give your mind a framework to process the grief. They act as your emotional anchor.
Which you really need, because sitting with that heavy history takes a massive physical and emotional toll. It completely drains you.
It really does.
And that is exactly why the logistical framework of these tours matters so much. You cannot be worrying about how to hail a taxi or where to find a safe bottle of water when you are emotionally exhausted.
Absolutely not.
So let's talk about how you actually make this happen from your hotel in Lagos. We have two very specific tour options to compare from our sources.
Let's break down the logistics. Option A is booked directly through ExcursionPass. It is a full-day heritage route priced at $599 per adult.
Okay, got it.
It is an 8-hour experience that includes your private transport, the fuel, and a dedicated English-speaking guide.
Wait, hold on. Nearly $600 for a day trip. In West Africa, where the cost of living and general travel expenses are usually much lower, that sounds incredibly steep.
I know it does sound high at first glance.
Break that down for me. Like, what are you actually getting for that premium that justifies the cost?
It's a premium price tag, absolutely.
Right.
But what justifies option A is the expansion of the historical scope. You do all the intense Badagry heritage sites, sure.
Right.
But it also takes you to the First Storey Building and the first Nigerian primary school.
Okay, which are landmarks tied to early missionary and education history. But how does that connect to the slave trade? Why are we visiting a missionary school on a heritage tour about slavery?
Because they are historically inextricably linked. As the transatlantic slave trade began to officially abolish in the mid-19th century, European powers pivoted.
Pivot to what?
To what they called legitimate commerce and colonization. Christian missionaries, like Reverend Henry Townsend, who laid the foundation for that First Storey Building, specifically set up operations in former slaving ports like Badagry.
Oh, using the exact same geographic trade routes.
Exactly. So by visiting these sites, you are seeing the direct transition from physical enslavement to colonial cultural assimilation. You're getting a multifaceted view of how one era immediately bled into the next.
Okay, that context makes the itinerary much more compelling. Now let's look at option B, which is listed via TripAdvisor by a local operator called Travelers Guide NG.
Right. This one comes in lower at $438 per adult.
And it includes an air-conditioned vehicle with hotel pickup in Lagos, a professional local guide, and crucially, it covers your entry and admission fees.
To Badagry, Acacia, and Gibbereffu Island, yes.
Plus, it explicitly includes bottled water and a taste of a local dish.
It is a slightly different package structure, focusing more on those all-inclusive on-the-ground necessities.
And honestly, I have to playfully push back on the fine print of that ExcursionPass option for a second. The $599 one explicitly excludes meals, entrance fees were required, and beverages.
Yeah, you have to bring your own or buy them there?
Look, an 8-hour trek through unpaved paths while processing historical trauma in the West African heat is grueling. I need my snacks. You need stamina.
You really do.
The fact that the TripAdvisor option actively includes your water and local food isn't just a nice perk. It is essential fuel for a very heavy day.
That is a very fair point about the fuel.
Yeah.
Physical stamina is non-negotiable here, but if you look closely at both of these options, they both provide the absolute vital necessities for this specific region.
Private transport and the guide.
Exactly. Secure, private transport, and a professional local guide. That is what you are really paying for. The safety, the navigation through Lagos traffic, and the local expertise.
True. You do not want to be haggling for a ride back to Lagos after walking the point of no return. That would be awful.
Exactly. But speaking of stamina, there is something incredibly crucial in the fine print of Option B, the TripAdvisor tour, that we have to flag for anyone listening.
Oh, the physical restrictions.
Yes, they have very strict physical restrictions listed. It is not wheelchair accessible, it is not recommended for travelers with back problems, and not recommended for pregnant travelers.
And restricted for those with heart problems, too.
Right, or other serious medical conditions.
That is a very specific list of medical restrictions for a historical tour. Why is the barrier to entry so high?
Because of the physical reality of the terrain. When you are walking the ancient slave routes, especially heading out to Bibrefu Island and the point of no return, you are dealing with unpaved, sandy paths.
And you are totally exposed to the elements.
Entirely exposed. Intense sun, high humidity. It is a physical journey that requires a solid baseline of mobility and cardiovascular stamina.
It is vital that travelers are fully prepared for the physical reality of walking in those footsteps, not just the emotional reality. That makes total sense. You are literally hiking through history.
You really are.
So, moving from the literal itinerary, the dollars, the terrain, the physical restrictions, I want to talk about how this day actually feels on the ground.
The human element.
Yes, the human element of this journey. Because reading an itinerary is one thing, but experiencing it alongside another human being dictates the entire tone of the day.
The guide can absolutely make or break an experience like this. They are the lens through which you view the history.
And we really have to shine a massive spotlight on a highly rated guide named Michael from Traveler's Guide NG.
Oh yes, the reviews for him are incredible.
We pulled these 5-star traveler reviews from the sources, and they paint an amazing picture of what this day is really like. Reviewers talk extensively about his sincerity and how attentive he is.
There's one reviewer, Lourdes T, I think.
Yes. She specifically highlighted how concerned Michael was with her safety while transmitting all this knowledge.
Safety and knowledge, the two pillars of a master guide.
But there's this other review that I found fascinating from a traveler who goes by MG Bar Salon. They mentioned that Michael actually taught them how to effectively negotiate prices in the local markets to their advantage.
I love that detail. It is such a specific and brilliant thing for a guide to do.
Right, because it takes you out of the role of just a passive, detached observer. When a guide teaches you how to bargain, they are handing you the keys to interact with the community on their terms.
It bridges the gap between voyeurism and actual cultural immersion.
Yeah.
You aren't just looking at the market, you are participating in it.
Exactly. It shifts the dynamic entirely.
You are learning the unwritten modern rules of the marketplace, which reminds you that this place is still very much alive.
Yes. And that brings up this incredible contrast that the reviews highlight so beautifully. You have this review from a traveler named Bush Pathfinder.
The one about the energy of Lagos.
Yeah, they talk about spending time in Lagos with friends and describe the city as welcoming them with so much energy and life. The music, the laughter, the vibrant beaches, the incredible real Lagos nightlife.
And then the very next day is just a complete shift.
Totally. You take this tour and you are plunged into the absolute solemnity and silence of Badagry. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
Because the tours actually build this contrast right into the itinerary. If you look at the ExcursionPass route, after spending the entire morning absorbing this heavy, heartbreaking history, the route intentionally finishes at Badagry Coconut Beach for what they call a quieter close.
That is a very profound and intentional design choice by the operators.
It seems almost jarring at first glance. You experience this emotional whiplash of standing in preserved slave cells, walking the path of no return, and then an hour later, you are sitting on Coconut Beach listening to the waves.
Or tasting a vibrant local Nigerian dish.
Right. How is a traveler supposed to reconcile those two extremes?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this contrast you were describing, the deep sorrow of the historical sites right alongside the joyful, vibrant energy of the beaches and the food, that is the very essence of modern travel in West Africa.
You have to experience both.
You do. You cannot truly understand the region by only looking at its wounds. The beach at the end of the tour isn't just a scenic view. Psychologically, it acts as a decompression chamber.
A decompression chamber. I really like that phrase.
It is so necessary. You have to acknowledge the deep, painful roots of the past, absolutely. But ending the tour on the beach provides the traveler a space to breathe.
To process the grief of the morning.
Exactly. It forces you to simultaneously experience the living, breathing cultural richness of the present.
Because the present, the joy of Lagos, the beauty of Coconut Beach, the skill of negotiating in the market, it is the ultimate proof of that survival and resistance we were talking about earlier.
That is a beautiful way to look at it.
It is the culture that survived the transatlantic slave trade.
Precisely. It is not a contradiction. It is a continuation of the story. You are witnessing the resilience of the land and its people today.
So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this right now and you have ever thought about traveling to Nigeria, or you are fascinated by how we as humans interact with our darkest histories, the takeaway here is clear.
It is about so much more than checking a box.
Exactly. A deep dive into Badagry isn't just about checking a historical box on a list of tourist sites. It is about authentic connection.
Completely.
It is about allowing yourself to feel the weight of history, but doing so safely, guided by local experts who know the physical and emotional terrain inside and out, and who ensure you have the stamina to absorb it all.
It really is about being willing to look at the darkest parts of human history while being held and supported by the warmth and expertise of the local people who are its custodians today.
Which leaves us with a rather profound question to consider.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. Millions of ancestors were forced to walk that path to the point of no return on Kuberfu Island, and they never came back.
Yeah.
So when we, as modern travelers, choose to walk those exact same footsteps today, and we do get to return home, what responsibility do we carry?
That is a heavy question.
How do we ensure that those untold stories of survival we learned on that path continue to shape the way we view and treat our modern world?
Wow. That is a question that will definitely stay with you long after the tour ends.
It definitely stays with me.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. Keep exploring, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next deep dive right here on the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass.